It's expensive, it's intense, it can be overwhelming.
Literally anyone who you would be looking to meet is there, right?
But there's the cost that comes.
That is by design. It's a 3 jam-packed days, but we really are adamant about packing in as much as we can. Once you're at the show, everything is there.
And that's what happens Sunday Riley, right? Welcome to the Evolve Voices podcast, a platform to hear the fascinating stories behind the people that power global commerce. I'm Edilsa, a brand advisor, and your US host of Evolve Voices. Today's story is of curation. Growing up in Brooklyn, Marielle Bobo and her twin brother Jean-Pierre were often made fun of for their names, which sounded different in their classrooms and didn't quite fit in. But their father, a proud Haitian man who came to New York in his early 20s, made sure they knew the story behind them. That early lesson in identity, legacy, shaped Marielle's life and career. From rebuilding EBONY to now curating conversations that matter as VP of content at Shoptalk. She spent over 2 decades helping others see the power of culture, identity, and representation. In this episode, she breaks down how to stay relevant in a rapidly changing industry, how to make the most of every session and connection, and what's coming up next at Shoptalk. Because for her, every conversation is a chance to shape the future. Marielle, welcome to Evolve Voices.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to see you again and can't wait to get into this conversation. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be super fun. We just met not too long ago, and it's almost so fun because I always feel like I meet people in the industry where I'm like, well, how have we not met before? But also you have such an interesting path where I'm like, maybe that is, I've never been an editor. I've never been in the magazine space, the content space heavy. So it's fun to now be meeting people like you. And when we were talking, there was this interesting point of intersection, our little island of Hispaniola, Haiti,
yes.
Dominican Republic. And I was like, we have to start there. The fun part of where we all begin. And as we were talking, you talked about that piece of Haiti and you talked about your roots and your name. And I thought that was really interesting because I've never thought about that. Did that surprise you when your dad told you about your roots in Burkina Faso and West Africa?
Yeah, well, first off, I'm so excited to be having this conversation with you. And yeah, I mean, when we had our first call and had that, recognized that we had that area of connectivity, it was almost like kindred souls kind of coming together, right? And there was that area of connection. But yeah, no, growing up as a kid in Brooklyn, New York, my dad, who's no longer with us, was a Haitian, very passionate about his Haitian lineage. And he came here to America, to New York, when he was only about 21, 22, met my mom, and they started a family here. But my dad was very adamant about making sure that my brother and I have a twin brother, that we knew about our heritage. And, growing up in Brooklyn, we had these French names, Marielle, and then my brother's name is Jean-Pierre. And then our last name's Bobo. People were just like, what the heck is that? They didn't know where we came from. So growing up in Brooklyn, as a child, we were often teased, at our names. And my dad wanted to make sure that we knew where we came from. And he told us the rich history of our name, which is that Bobo is the name of the capital city in Burkina Faso in West Africa. And so we, unlike a lot of, African Americans here in the country, can actually trace our names back to the continent. And we have a name that is actually, the capital city in Burkina Faso. And so that's something that my dad was always very proud of, and he wanted to make sure that we knew about it. Bobo Dioulasso is the name of the actual city in Burkina Faso. And actually, I've met a few people that are from that city, and that when they've seen my name, have their faces have lit up because of the connectivity with that being my last name. And so, it was something that growing up as a kid, my dad wanted to make sure that we knew about. And that heritage, that history, which he really imparted in me when I was a child, is something that has really driven me throughout my career. This idea of legacy, of telling stories, of finding that connectivity. And you and I even found it in our first conversation, right? And so that's something that always has sort of driven me in my career, and something that I've always thought about, how do I bring legacy and that connection to whatever work I'm doing, when it comes to storytelling.
Do you remember when you had that conversation? You must have been so young, you and your brother, right?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say like it was like elementary school.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember like when we were like school age, because that's when we started to get teased, when we were younger and we were like kind of sheltered in the house with my parents, like that was our name and we never thought anything of it. But once we started to like, once we became school age and we were now like in classrooms with other kids, that was the first time that I remember like being teased at the name and people saying like, what is that name, or like pronouncing it incorrectly, and so I remember like that was when we started to have those initial conversations with my dad, because my brother went through it as well in our schools, and he was just like, no, wait a minute, like you need to know where you come from. This is the heritage of our name. And wherever you go, make sure that you are, explaining to people that lineage, because it's something that is a really special story that not a lot of us get to have. The fact that we have this name that we can trace back, is rooted to the continent, and like carry that with you no matter where you are. And so that's something that stuck with me. And I want to say I probably was maybe like 6 or 7. It was like when I was just starting out in school when my dad, made sure that he told us about that.
It's so interesting because for your dad, it was like, know your name. We actually weren't attached to the slave trade. For me and my grandparents, when I had that conversation, it was interesting. Obviously I am darker skin. There's African American part of me, or African part of me. But they always took tremendous pride in our Spanish origins. So they always talking about like, like we came from Spain and this is like the city where we were. And so it's always interesting what our ancestors tie themselves to as part of our story. Does that influence how you see brands, communities, and conversations today and identity? Like, I just think it's so interesting. I'm just thinking about myself and that part.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it really all just, I think, depends on like how you were raised and what you
Yeah,
were exposed to. And I think the fact that I grew up in Brooklyn, it's such a melting pot. I think when
yeah,
I was a kid, I didn't realize, the levels of exposure. But growing up there, I got to meet people from everywhere, like not just fellow Haitians, but
yeah,
people really from like every part of the Caribbean and all over the world. Went to school with kids that were from everywhere. And to your point, like that connectivity of like, what are the things that families sort of like tether you to, and what
yeah,
are the things, like even my dad, like it was very important for us to know. He tried to teach us Haitian Creole. I never actually learned it, but French, French was something that I learned in school, right? Like it was like we could choose from either like French, English, or Spanish, and like French was what I took. And oddly enough, like me learning French allowed me to learn Haitian Creole because
yeah,
the language, so there were certain things with like the pronunciation of certain words, the root of certain words, where I was able to sort of like it helped me learn Haitian Creole better. But yeah, I think it really just kind of depends on the things that like your family tethers you to, and those individual experiences that you have. And when I went off to college at Howard University, it is historically Black college and university, but like Black people from all over the world,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
so like just got to meet like people from every walk of life, all the different cultural nuances. And I think like those experiences just gave me a really early perspective of just like diversity and storytelling, and how important it is for people to see themselves in whatever the story is that you're telling, and the importance of creating that connection. And so that's something that I've always carried, with me in the work. I'm
yeah,
always thinking about like what's going to be the personal tie that makes the story really resonate with someone.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
The diversity piece that sometimes people use the blanket Black for everyone. And even within Black, there is diversity and there are different stories. And that's been a big part of what you've done with your career. I'm sure your father must have been so tremendously proud of what legacy you've built. I know he's passed now, but like I can, and I hope that he saw it. You've since gone on to work at EBONY, Essence, Allure. Now you're at Shoptalk, and earlier this year, you had your first Shoptalk experience. That is an event that I attended for the first time as well. It was crazy seeing over 10,000 plus retail leaders converged in one single convention center. Was there a moment that it hit you? Oh, this is huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
So October will actually mark my 1 year anniversary at Shoptalk. I actually started at Shoptalk Fall. So
Okay.
Shoptalk Fall was like my first day was like at the event.
Oh my God.
Um, but I attended more as like I was there more so as an attendee
Yeah.
than like a staffer, you know. So it was nice being able to experience my first Shoptalk like through the eyes of someone who would be there as like a show goer, which gave me a really different perspective. But that was the first show that I actually had experienced. And then when spring, you know, fast forward to spring, which ended up being the first show that I actually worked on, much bigger show, right? So fall, we have about 4,000 attendees. And to your point, spring, 10,000. So I think like we worked on the show for months, and you know we know the magnitude of how many speakers we're recruiting and all the sessions and programming, but like I think being on the ground and seeing it and being in the convention center, you know, in Mandalay Bay and seeing the buzzy, hearing the buzz, feeling the buzz, all of the energy. I think our meetup program is where I think it really like hit me, because literally like you're seeing thousands of meetings happening, these one-on-one meetings, the buzz, like the you know, hearing everyone talking, all of the meetings taking place. I think like kind of being a fly on the wall and witnessing meetup for the first time was where I was like, whoa, you know, seeing like thousands of people having these one-to-one meetings was, I think, like that big like kind of aha moment. And I think also just, you know, the Vegas Convention Center
Yeah.
is massive, right? Like the show is happening on multiple floors. Everything is really spread out. It's a lot of walking. And I think like all of that, like the magnitude of the size, and then all of the learnings that are happening, is where I was really like, whoa, like this is huge, you know, and just so impressive seeing how it all comes together in just a few months.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a few months, but how long does it take? Do you start like 6 months in advance, 3 months in advance? Like, what's the lead up time?
Yeah, so I head up content for both our fall and spring events. So we're always kind of working on both events in tandem, right? So like we have fall, sorry, that's coming up in just under a month.
Yeah.
But obviously our spring show is going to be happening in March of next year. So we are also starting to have preliminary thoughts around like, you know, what are some of the big picture themes that we want to tackle? What are some of the topics that we want to dig into for our programming? Who are some of the, you know, speakers that we're thinking about maybe for main stage and wanting to get those invitations out earlier? So we're always sort of working on the events in tandem. So I'm always sort of thinking about two events, the
Let's see.
one that's currently like, you know, closest to us, and then the one that's like a little bit further away. But I think, you know, work with the fall event in mind, we also get a lot of learnings that come out of that show that we also put in place when we think about the programming for spring. So we do a lot of questionnaires and things like that, at fall, where we ask people, you know, what are you looking forward to seeing at spring? What topics would you like us to cover? And we also use that to start shaping our programming as well.
That's awesome because you're talking. It's August and that's a March event. That's 9 months. That's insane. You talked about the meetup, and I think that's also when I noticed the magnitude of the event. And I think it was the clock for me, the clock to count down how many minutes were left in yours. It to me, Brett. There's so much. This is how you keep 10,000 organized. You know, like
Yeah.
there's no other way, and which was really fun. And I think reading through your LinkedIn post, I could see now. I didn't know that your hands were over it. Like I didn't know that it was Marielle. Starting to see Shop Talk Fall informing Shop Talk Spring. But now looking at it, you're over all over it. Programming, curation, moderation. You were hosting. You know, when you finally came up for air, it seemed it was at from that women's innovation panel you moderated with the Haynes Brands leader. Where do you start when shaping panels like that? Is it with the topic? Is it with the speakers, or is it something else?
So, Shop Talk is a really unique event in that we take a really editorial approach to our
Yeah.
programming. I think that that's one of the things that made this a really great transition for me, having spent 25 years in the magazine and you know, media world, is that, you know, when we think about our overall sessions and our events, we think about sort of like where does it start? What's sort of like the big picture theme that we feel is important to anchor our event in? And then from there, once we sort of like landed on that, we then think about our different track rooms and programming each track room, almost like thinking about it almost like a chapter in a book, or like a, you know, a chapter, a section in a magazine that's themed around a specific area of interest, you know. So we have these like 4 pillars that are sort of like, you know, extensions of the larger theme, where for the 3 days of the event, we're doing these deep dives into each of those topics. So once we sort of identified what the big picture is, that's when we start to say, okay, like, what are the conversations that we want to have within each of the track rooms? And so we kind of go from there. And then once, you know, we as a content team have sort of, you know, landed on what those individual themed track rooms are, then we get like even more granular with like, okay, we across the 3 days, we're going to have, you know, 10 sessions, let's say, per, you know, in each room that are happening. What are those must see 10 sessions that really do deep dives into that topic? And what are the conversations? And so once we've done that, then we start figuring out like, well, who do we want to have? And a lot of that is informed by, you know, the news. Like we stay really on top of what's happening in the industry. We're constantly reading all the trade publications, different news outlets, but also for me, especially coming from the media background, I stay really tapped into social media as well, because I think it's also important to stay in touch with like, what are the conversations that are bubbling up online, you know, especially because you know, at Shoptalk we're really big on being future forward, and so that's not only featuring, you know, sort of our big box big legacy brands, but also like, who are the people that are leading the future? And a lot of that is you're identifying by kind of staying tapped into the conversations that are happening on these social media platforms.
Right.
That's also where we like find new brands. And so once we've like identified who the speakers are that we want to have, then we set up these prep calls. So like with the Hanes conversation at Shop Talk Spring, we reached out to the Hanes team, you know, said that we wanted to have a conversation with them about a new launch that they were doing. We identified 2 senior leaders that made sense for that panel. And then we set up prep calls where we got to talk to them and hear what they're most excited about sharing. And based off of those insights that the executives shared, then I start to sort of shape the conversation from there. What are the questions that I want to ask? Like, how do we really shape the conversation? Also, with the Hanes session, there was a video that they wanted to show that helped to illustrate the new campaign that we were talking about. So figuring out how to tee that up and how to incorporate that into the conversation so that it felt really engaging for the audience. And so, you know, we really tailor it to the session depending on the topic and the speakers. But it's a really bespoke process, and it's very involved for all of the speakers. You know, we have at Shop Talk Fall, we have about 130 speakers. At Spring, we had, I want to say, over 230 speakers. So we're doing that with every single speaker. You know, we set up 2 prep calls with each speaker where we really dig into the nuances of each session, you know, because we really want to make sure that we're coming out with the best insights.
That's exactly what I was going to say, because you're trying to come up with the best insights. There must be this tension between what they want to get across versus what you want to get across. And I found the most fabulous thing about this event is it's not pay to play. You know, you're really going into and setting up what you want the conversation to be around. So how do you figure out that tension?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the fact that we don't, you know, that we are a no pay to play event, really allows us to have a lot of editorial freedom with the conversations. And I think that the brands that show up on our stages know that about us. And so there isn't really much tension that comes, you
Right.
know, with regards to like dictating the conversation, because they already know like, hey, look, like, there are specific goals that we have for this topic, you know, based off of what we know our audience really wants to see. And so this is where we're going to go with it. And then during those prep calls, that's where we're really able to like sort of iron out things and get into the meat of where we want to go to make sure that it's going to come away with the best takeaways for the audience. And I think, frankly, for our speakers, that's something that they love about the event. I think that they know that when they're speaking at Shop Talk, that audience members know that they're coming away with real insights, that it's not that a brand just sort of like paid their way on the stage, and that we're really going to give them information that's helpful for them and honest, you know, honest and frank. And it's not going to be sort of speakers sort of reiterating something that's in a press release that's sort of, surface. We're going to dig deep and give those real insights. And I think on the content side, it really frees things up for us because we're also able to be more flexible with like the brands that we can put on the stage. When you're at a pay to play event, you're kind of tethered to whoever paid for the spot.
Yeah.
And if the brand pays for the spot, they can dictate the conversation, the talking points, and that never goes over well with the audience, right? So I think it gives us a freedom to also experiment with who gets to be on our stages. So it's not always the biggest brands that had the most money. It can sometimes be those smaller brands, those disruptor brands that are doing really innovative things as well.
That's so cool. And it's that toolkit you talked about. It's like that you're having these prep calls. But I think the most interesting one for me, as someone a lover of culture and having a pulse on it, is you being the pulse of the social media platforms. And like, what are people talking about? Like, what do they find interesting? Because that makes the topics relevant. And it's something that you've done your entire career. You're a builder, you're a curator, you're a storyteller. And so I feel like it makes sense why you're at the helm of this event. And I want to go through all of those things with you in your career. I think one of the most interesting, you've often talked about your time at Ebony. In essence, I'm actually more intrigued by a brand you built from scratch, Ayesha Curry's AC Brands. And because I think it shows so much about how you build from the ground up. And take me to the moment you realized you had the chance to create this brand. Where were you? What did you see that made you think I can make this come alive?
Yeah, so I think I'm trying to remember when I started there, but I think it was right before this, I was the right before that role,
Yeah.
I was working at Essence as the fashion director there. And they reached out to me about coming on board to help Ayesha shape her new brand. So at the time, her company, Ayesha Curry Brands, had already been in place, but they were looking to create a print magazine that they were doing in partnership with Meredith Publishing. And then she was also looking to build out a product line and a brick and mortar store, almost in the vein of like a Martha Stewart Living, where it's a lifestyle brand. And she was specifically looking to target a little bit of a younger demographic, and definitely with a female focus. She was really interested in highlighting women-owned brands and was also really rooted to telling stories that really amplified diverse cultures. And so that was something that really resonated with me and has always been something that I've been really passionate about in the work that I do. And so it really just spoke to me, and the opportunity to be able to not only take my editorial background, but also take my background in fashion and creative to this opportunity. It was like a great synergy. And, very, very rarely in your career do you get to be a part of like starting something from scratch and building,
Yeah.
and so it was very much startup, which you need to be scrappy for. But I think, but that was exciting. And so, yeah, so she tapped me to first, help shape the editorial vision for her magazine called Sweet July. And then Sweet July then had a brick and mortar store as well as a product line. So I was also helping to identify brands that she would include in the store because she was looking to have a curated selection of women-owned brands. And so I was very tapped into like who are some of the really exciting brand owners that are innovating across the lifestyle space from covering them for my years as an editor. And so I was able to help identify some brands that I thought would be cool for her to feature and include in the store. And it was both a brick and mortar store that she had opened in Oakland, as well as e-commerce. So it was also like, helping launch her website, building out the e-commerce offerings, and then figuring out how we were taking the storytelling that was in the print magazine to online as well as shaping out how it all showed up on social media. So it was like this full sort of like 360 experience of like the e-commerce, the physical retail, as well as a print magazine and digital storytelling sort of all in one. And again, I think, what really attracted me to the idea was the fact that, Ayesha had this passion for women-owned brands and diverse stories. And that's always been, something that's been top of mind for me. And I was just excited to be able to highlight a lot of really great brands that may not always get that visibility and to help curate it in a really beautiful way.
you talked about like trying to bring attention to those underrepresented female brands. When Shoptalk came to you, like, is that the same energy you came with? Like, what, to build again an even bigger platform and event?
Yeah, I think exactly. That was a big piece of what excited me about Shop Talk as well, because it's interesting because Shop Talk is an event that's focused on commerce, and everyone now is like in the business of commerce in some way. Even a media company, like when I was in the magazine world, everyone is getting into e-commerce and events, and so all the lines are blurred, and so it was like a great sort of transition for me. But the opportunity to be able to give visibility to brands on such a large scale. Shop Talk is this great sort of like petri dish of like everyone in the business of retail, from like top investors to, retailers and brands, tech companies, sort of the intersection of all of those things. And I've, felt like this is such a great space for brands that are on the verge. And at Shop Talk Spring, we have Startup Pitch, which is a great opportunity for burgeoning brands as well. And so those were all things that really excited me about coming here, was the opportunity to shed light. And, across our stages at Shop Talk Fall, you'll see we have a great mix of like, established brands like our Home Depots and Sam's Clubs and, Target and, so many of those folks. But then we also have, a lot of burgeoning brands, a lot of really innovative brands within the beauty space, which we're leaning into more. A lot of brands that are doing interesting things in the home space. So I think for attendees, we've really positioned fall as a show of discovery, where not only can they come and hear from, the big sort of tried and true brands that they're familiar with, but it's a place where they can also learn about the new brands that may not have been on their radar. And that, frankly, I think bring a lot of excitement to the category because they're trying new and different things. I think especially within beauty, and me sort of paying a lot of attention to social media. That's where you see a lot of the innovation and connection that's happening with shoppers is within the beauty category, right? I think like beauty does such a great job at like working with influencers and making everyone feel seen, and inclusivity and all of those things. Beauty does that in such a dynamic way. And I think that every brand could learn something from that. So I think that's something that I definitely have been intentional about bringing to our event as well.
But that's an art, right? Curating like conversations. I feel like you've made a career of it. You have an instinct for spotlighting those so mainstream. I think you were the first major outlet to put the Houston rapper Toby on the cover. And so that's an artist that at that point had gotten co-signs from Beyonce, Erykah Badu, Michelle Obama. How does that conversation happen? How do you discover?
Toby, he was, first of all, that was such a fun shoot to work with.
Yeah.
He was so creative. But yeah, Toby was another person that came out of the work, the research that I had always been doing online. Toby is someone who I had been following on social media for quite some time. And at the time, this was when I was the editor-in-chief and senior vice president at Ebony. And at the time, the brand had just been purchased by new owners out of bankruptcy, and the brand was pretty much in startup mode. So I had this big feat of taking sort of this like legacy brand, they turned 80 this year, and reintroducing it to a new audience. They wanted to make the brand digital first. They hadn't really invested as much in digital up until then. They were still like very focused on print. And I knew that, the digital audience is a younger audience. So if you want the kids, I say the kids, if you want the kids to know about Ebony, you gotta, you
The
have
kids
to
keep on getting younger and younger now.
The kids get younger and younger. But I'm like, if you want the kids to know about this brand, you have to also start putting people on the covers that resonate with them. And I think sometimes in legacy companies in general, I think a lot of times there's a lot of hesitancy to change. There's a lot of hesitancy to like the new guard and ushering the new guard, which is why at Shop Talk I'm very adamant about like bringing in the next and figuring out who's doing things that are different within the space. But at Ebony, knowing that the goal was to really bring in a younger audience, that we were going digital first, I just was like, who's really tapped in, who's doing something that's really interesting and innovative. And at the time, like Toby was someone that I had stumbled upon just following him on social. And I just loved what he stood for. Young guy, but he's a family man. You know, he has his wife and kids front and center. And then just like artistically, as a creative, his music was really interesting and his visuals were stunning. And I come from a visual background, so I'm thinking about like what a cover with him could look like, and creatively how we could push the envelope. So I'm like, we can shoot him, and like even if you don't know who Toby is, if we do it right, you're going to stop and look to figure out who he is, because the visuals are going to be that powerful. And that's what we did. And so, you know, we went and shot him in Houston, and we did 2 covers. One was with him and his wife and kids, and then the other was a solo cover with him. We rolled them out as digital covers. And at the time, I had just started doing these motion covers at Ebony, which eventually started to go viral and like really resonated with people. And that Toby cover was one that did really, really well for us. It was, I think, maybe our second or third cover after I had joined the magazine there. So we were like freshly new on the scene, and people just loved it. And I think like there was a lot of excitement about seeing like sort of like this edgy new version of like a Black family, this like next gen young, you know, family. They were wearing like these green outfits, and like, you know, it just looked really cool. And I think it resonated with people. No matter, you know, family is something that no matter how old you are, no matter what background you are, is going to resonate. And I think that that's why that cover did well, because I think the kids who knew Toby were excited to see Toby. Those who didn't know Toby were just excited to see this beautiful young family. And I think like people could just appreciate it for what it was. And that did well for us. And so again, like that's something that I always am passionate about, just tapping into like the next, keeping my ears to the street with when it comes to brands, when it comes to just who's really pushing the future. And at Shoptalk, that's something that, you know, we are an event that's all about the future of retail. So that's something that, you know, I carry through in this role now as well.
I love that it's not just like who's cool, who's being talked about, but what do they stand for? And also like, what's the vision? Like once we put their name on a collateral, like what will it mean for people? You talked about a brand like Clearcut being at this conference. Is that the brand that excites you the most to see it, for people to see at Shoptalk, Paul, or is there somebody else? You love Clearcut, but like, man, I'm really excited about this one too.
Oh, there's so much. That's it's like making me choose like which baby
between
is
your
which baby is my favorite baby. Right? They all become our babies because we're spending so much time with these calls and the prep and everything. But I think, I mean, there's so many. You know, definitely the Clear Cut is one that's exciting. But I would also say there's another brand that's going to be joining us on the main stage called Pinky. They're really cool. They are reimagining the personal care space. They're going to be on a session called The Disruptors, where we're highlighting brands that are kind of like what you would call like a challenger brand. So they are adding newness to a legacy category. And Pinky is a brand that is reimagining the personal care space, providing sanitary products for tweens and reimagining what those products can look like. So you're not using your mom's products, you know, and creating something that feels special and unique for them, you know. And that really came out of like her own experience when she was going through that with her own children and figuring out how to create something that made them feel special. And I think, again, like going back to what I was saying about like, you know, feeling seen and that visibility, and like the best brands are the brands that are birthed out of, you know, creating something that allows people to see themselves, you know. And so that's a brand that I'm really excited about, because they're reimagining a category that, you know, has long been dominated by, you know, these legacy brands. But then we're also seeing, you know, legacy companies that are having exciting transition, like Eli Tahari. We have Eli Tahari that's going to be joining us on one of our track sessions. We have their new CEO, Jeremy Tahari. And Jeremy Tahari is really young. He's in his 20s, and he's the son of Eli Tahari, and he has recently taken over as the new CEO of the brand. And he, you know, his dad sort of raised him within the company since he was a teen and taught him the business. And so I think it'll be really exciting to hear him talking about his vision for the brand, and how he plans to usher it forward in a new direction. You know, I think seeing someone so young, you know, in their 20s at the helm of a legacy brand, is really exciting. And I'm excited to hear him talk about his vision and how he plans to bring in newer audiences and sort of connect the dots across generations. And I think we're seeing that happen more with a lot of brands sort of trying to figure out how to connect the dots across generations, how to bridge the gap, how to build connectivity. And that's a story that we'll see sort of across the stages with a lot of the different sessions that we're having.
That's so cool. I didn't know that he was in his 20s, and that's really exciting. I think to bring that, I think the Nordstrom family has obviously been leading their retailer through family for decades, but to now see somebody even younger at the helm and like what that fresh perspective, it's kind of cool. It's really cool. And I think one thing you talked earlier about moving from print to digital, you've been on the pulse of knowing that it's beyond a channel. It's not, it could be like an event that you're putting on, but it lives beyond the event. So I've loved how you push storytelling beyond print and into podcasts, into documentaries, into digital. And so take me to the moment at Ebony when you launched those motion covers and interactive digital content. Like, what was happening behind the scenes where people like print is dead? Like, let's do something.
I mean, people have been saying print is dead for a few years now. Yes. Like it's been dead, but actually it's not. It's having a resurgence. I think like print, I don't think print in my mind, I mean, I'm a print girly in the end. I don't think print is dead. I think that the old model of print is dead, but I definitely think that there's room for print to be done in a new and innovative way. But yeah, I think so at Ebony, the digital covers came out of the fact that the brand was going to be digital first. We weren't going to be printing at all at the time when I started. The goal was to move Ebony into being digital only. We weren't going to be doing print magazines. And so for me, coming from a creative background, I was a fashion editor for many years before Ebony. I knew that, in order for it to truly resonate, knowing that you're competing with so many content, platforms across the industry, we need to do something that visually is going to really make us stand out. Yeah. Especially if we want to compete with, a lot of other brands that frankly have bigger budgets than we had at the time and a bigger reach and all the things. And so for me, it was absolutely, we have to do digital. And so from the very first cover, it was a digital cover and it was motion. And I hired a photographer to come in-house. He was someone I had worked with for many years, Keith Major. And together we sort of shaped this vision for what the covers would look like. And, we incorporated photography with video and the photos would kind of come to life. And they really like started to take off and sort of like become a thing of their own, and every month we would launch them and they would get a lot of engagement on social, and then they started to get picked up by other media outlets. And one of the big moments was we did a cover with Jonathan Majors, and it was like this viral cover we did for Valentine's Day that ended up like on every TV, on Sherry Shepherd's show, and all these, like, everyone was dying over this cover. And then when the film The Black Panther came out, the second Black Panther movie, Wakanda Forever, came out, we did a partnership with Google Pixel where we did this motion cover that was shot with the cell phone. And it ended up being like a huge, $1 million partnership with them. And we then extended that into our Power 100 event, which came in the fall, that they ended up sponsoring as well. We brought in the cast of Black Panther that had appeared on the cover, and they showed up at the event. So it was, again, this idea of like the full 360 experience of taking like something that was like, digital content, then taking that digital content, including video in it, then taking that same story and now bringing it to the event, to the stage with our, Power 100 gala, and having it be this full circle experience. And I think that's what storytelling is now today. It's sort of all of those things. And with Shoptalk, same vision of sort of like building out this ecosystem, right? We have our events, within our portfolio, but then, we've also been thinking about like programming outside of the event. Like we've been doing store tours, and we've been having members of our content team do tours of some of the retailers that we're featuring at Shoptalk. And actually at Shoptalk Fall, where we're building out our Shop Walks program, where you can actually come to Chicago, and our team has curated a really fun list of dynamic retailers in Chicago that we think really are leading the future of fashion, the future of retail. and you can go to the stores and see sort of what they're doing in person, and then you can hear from those same speakers on the stage. So again, the same idea of like the 360, you know, like in person, on stage. One person that we're doing that with that I'm really excited about is Jonathan Adler, the home design icon. He's a celebrity kind of in his own right. He's going to be opening up the show on day one. He's going to be on the main stage, our first main stage speaker. But earlier that day, he's going to be participating in the Shop Walks tour. So Jonathan himself is going to be like doing a tour of his store. So attendees of the Shop Walks program can like go to his store in Chicago, watch Jonathan talk about, you know, his brick and mortar and like why he, you know, what's special about it and what he's doing, what some of the innovative programs are that he's doing. And then later that day, you can go see Jonathan Adler on the main stage, hear from him, you know, about the different initiatives that he's imparting. And we're doing that with a few other retailers as well. So again, like this full kind of like full circle experience of the storytelling that we're also bringing, you know, now to this event as well. So that's always been sort of how I think about programming, how are we connecting the dots and making it really worthwhile for attendees so that they're coming away with the best learnings.
Yeah, you talked about coming away with the best learnings, and it's because as I was talking about to a few people at the conference, is that they're excited about who's there, right? But there's the cost that comes. It's expensive. It's intense. It can be overwhelming to be at a huge convention center. How do you get the most out of it, right? And I feel like one of the things you're saying is like, you know, we're putting everything together, the founders, the brands, the ideas. This is exactly why being here matters. Like, what's there? Was there a moment for you? Maybe it was a Shop Talk fall or spring that illustrates to you like why it matters being at Shop Talk.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is hearing all of the amazing stories of connections that were made at the show. We have, you know, post show, and even like, I don't even want to say just post show, even as the show is happening on our LinkedIn, you know, on LinkedIn, we're seeing like hundreds of posts of like people that are physically at the show at the time that are like posting about the sessions and posting about what they just learned from hearing someone speak, or even just like someone that they bumped into at the show, you know, because literally anyone who you would be looking to meet is there, right? And so I think like there's an energy that you can feel that's happening as the show was going on, but then also it's really exciting post show to hear about all of the magic that happens coming out of the show, of like people that maybe did a meetup meeting with someone that turned into a business transaction, or even like from a speaker standpoint, we've had people that maybe like started out on one of our smaller track stages as a speaker, and then they're like on the main stage now. So for example, a really like this just happened. Sunday Riley, who we had speak at Shop Talk Spring, founder of Sunday Riley Skincare, really like buzzy skincare brand. She spoke on one of our sessions at Shop Talk Spring on the new market stages. And then, you know, but she resonated so well with the audience, and people just like loved, you know, the insights that she had to say. And she was such a dynamic speaker that she's going to be on the main stage at Shop Talk Lux in Abu Dhabi in January. So this is a speaker that like started out at, you know, at our spring event on one of the smaller stages, and now she's going to be on the main stage at our Lux event in Abu Dhabi. So I think just showing, you know, seeing the growth of brands, you know, we've had brands that have, you know, it's turned into relationships with tech companies that maybe they've employed, or maybe it's been, you know, just different partnerships that have come out of it. And so I think just like seeing the magic that happens post show, of the relationships that are, you know, the relationships that blossom and that come out of sort of the interactions that are happening on the floor, are where, you know, it's like, this is why we're like, this is why we do this, you know, in the mix of it, when we're like in the weeds of it, like right now we're in the weeds of it, it's like, okay, where like it's like tunnel vision. But I think like coming off the show and just like hearing the feedback is where we're okay, like this is what we do this for. And to your point, we really are adamant about like packing in as much as we can. You know, it's a 3 like jam-packed days, but that is by design, totally making it worth your investment, making it so that you really don't have a need for anything. Like once you're at the show, everything is there. We have lounges if you need to go off and take some calls, if you need to do some meetings, like there's no need for you to leave like once you're there. The food hall is legendary. Every kind of cuisine that you could think of is there, and then of course we have fun.
There's
We have like
DJing
our
happening at all times. I'm vibing while going
yeah,
through the halls.
there's yeah, and at fall this year we've got some really fun activities. You've got like a salon that's going to be on site, so you can get all glammed up,
Okay.
for whatever you have going on. And then the after party. I mean, we always do a legendary party on the second day of the show, and we've got Timbaland who's going to be like spearheading that on the Thursday night. So we work hard, but we also play hard, and we really want to make sure that people not only come away with a lot of learnings, but that they also have fun while they're there.
Yeah, I think the interesting mechanism, also the meetup, it kind of takes, for me, I don't know if it was for everyone else, but it takes the sales out of the other engagements that you have. Is like the meetups are very intentional. You either, you go there with a goal in mind, right? And then I felt like after, because those were centered on the goal, like you can just have natural conversations on the hall. But you actually made me also think of something else, which is it's not just the networking in the event, it's the networking that follows. So it's like where you start, you can either start or continue relationships. And that's what happened to Sunday Riley, right? She was able to, that brand was able to go off and kind of continue to build from there. And in that way, so many ways is how it pays off. To be there and to grow those relationships. I'm super excited to see also just the fall versus spring dynamic. And I, have not been able to go to Chicago, which is one of my most embarrassing facts as somebody who's a world traveler, is that the twice that I've gone, I got snowed out. So the snow has not wanted me to be part of it. Now I get to go in fall, which I'm really excited about. Marielle, you have given us so much time. I wanted to end on a few like rapid fire fun questions. You went as a spectator Shoptalk fall. You were full on hosting in Shoptalk spring. For people who are going there for the first time, what would be your number one recommendation?
Ooh, number one, I can only give one.
I'll give you two if you need it. Yeah.
Okay. I'll do two. So number one, I would say like go in with a game plan. So by that I mean like make sure like look at the app, download the Shoptalk app, because that'll be like your best friend on site. You can sort of see everything that's happening. Sometimes, in the world of events, like there are things that happen on site. Sometimes there might be changes that happen to the agenda at the last minute. So the app is going to be your best friend because it's going to be up to date. You're up to date in real time should anything change. But when I say go in with a plan, it's because there's so much programming, there's so much happening across the 3 days, and you really want to make sure that you go in with intentions of like, okay, these are the sessions that I definitely want to go to. If you have specific learnings that you want to come away with, our track rooms are themed. So we make it really easy for you to figure out where to go depending on what your area of focus is. Like we have like, if you're looking for like AI and data, we have a track that's just on that. If you're looking for a track that's all about like brand storytelling and creative, there's a track for that. If you're looking for a track on leadership, we have a whole new track that we dedicated to conversations around sort of the new mandate for leadership and running teams in today's landscape. And then finally, if you're looking for a track that's, dedicated to personalization and creating those deeper shopping experiences for consumer, like we have content that's on that. So look at the app and make sure that you figure out what the sessions are that you want to go to so that you don't miss anything. And then the second thing to sort of piggyback off of that would be to make sure you check out the key takeaways session. It happens on the last day. And the key takeaways session is where the Shoptalk team will curate sort of our summary of like, these are the big learnings from the show. So that way, like if you missed anything, we like, put it all together in a very digestible way, sort of recap the big learnings for anyone that may have missed certain sessions. So that would be my other thing.
I love that. I download the app is always like my first, like people who go there and haven't downloaded the app, you're already behind the eight ball. But the good thing is you guys actually start the process of reaching out to people so early on that it's like, if you haven't downloaded the app, I mean, you're not going to the event because you have to fill out your profile, you have to do all these things. So I feel like you guys do a good job of prepping us. what's a daily habit that you do during the conference that keeps your mind sharp? I'll tell you mine to give you yours. I take a walk every morning before I know that I'm going to be seeing a lot of people, and that might be my only alone time. And so it kind of like helps me just have my own space. But I don't know, is there something that you've done?
Yeah, mine is similar. Same
Yeah.
thing, like starting out the day with just like having quiet time. So I'll usually like find somewhere quiet that I can just like be outside, because that's the biggest thing. It's like when you're working the event, like I like you don't get outside at all.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
like
yeah.
we're staying in the convention
It
center,
feels like
all of us,
Vegas, even when you're not
and
in Vegas.
yeah. But Chicago is very similar,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
like all of us from the team are pretty much like staying in the convention center, and like we're working the event the whole time. So like you could literally like never see Chicago, like never be outside if you are not intentional. So to your point, same thing. Like I try to like get up early, like before the day starts, like, I try to like head out like around like 6 a.m. and do like a little walk outside, have some fresh air, and just like sort of like get my mind in the right, headspace before going in. So just like, again, having that bit of quiet time before the day starts.
Yeah, amazing. Well, we're closing. Before we close, where can we find you? Where can we find Shop Talk as we head into Shop Talk Fall?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn at my handle is just Marielle Bobo. And the same for Shop Talk. Definitely go to shoptalk.com, and that's where you can find out all of the details about not only our fall event, but also all of our future events, as well as our social channels, our Shop Talk Instagram page, as well as our Shop Talk LinkedIn, which is where we are continuing to just tease out
Yeah.
some insights around some of the speakers, our main stage, which we'll be announcing soon, and all the other good stuff that's coming. So definitely check us out on LinkedIn, check us out on our website, and be sure to get your tickets while there are still a few left.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's especially having you like leading the charge here, like who's so focused on the experience, rising voices. Like that's what I want to be at a conference for, and to see, so excited about those, and especially excited as a first time Shop Talk Fall attendee to see what that's all about and how it's evolving from Shop Talk Spring. Excited to meet you in person too.
Yeah, so excited to meet you as well. And thank you so much for having me on. I can't wait to meet you in person in Chicago. And I'm excited to hear your thoughts on fall versus spring. They're very different shows, but I think we've made the kind of like experience and the flow of the fall show very different intentionally. And I think, folks will be really excited about the way that we've curated the show. So can't wait to hear what you think.
I'm so excited, Marielle. Have an amazing rest of your day.
You too. Thanks so much. This was great.
Now make sure you subscribe to Evolve Voices, this leading and incredible project where our ambassadors are interviewing amazing professionals from all over the world so they can share their perspective and benefit you with their perspective, their knowledge, and you can understand what's happening in the different markets. Evolve Voices is a project part of the Evolve Commerce Club, the #1 and leading community where we connect international professionals in the world of commerce. We are now connecting professionals in more than 40 markets, and every week we invite an expert to share their perspective and their knowledge. So if you'd like to know more, you can always look at the comments. We have a link there so you can request your application, and stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks for watching. All the best. Ciao.